In this video, I will demonstrate how to use the Python library docx to add a data frame to a Microsoft Word document. Starting off, I import the document object from docx. I will also need the data frame object from Pandas and the randint function from NumPy's random module. The document object creates a Microsoft Word document in memory. The data frame function will create a data frame, and I'll be using the randint function in my data frame creation process. I'm going to start by creating a data frame. It's very likely that you already have a data frame you are working with that you are trying to write to a Word document, but for my case, I do not. So I will define the data of my data frame right here with this dictionary. My two keys are food and amount, and I have 5 separate items of food. I'll be using the randint function to create 5 random amounts of each food item. That data I will pass to the DataFrame object and store it as df. Executing this cell, we can see we have a very small data frame of food and amount. If I continually execute this multiple times, you will see the amount changes as it's using the randint function. So just a very basic, bare bones data frame for our example purposes. Creating a Microsoft Word document involves us creating a document object in memory. I do that here by assigning the variable doc a document object. Each document object has an add table method that accepts rows and columns as arguments. This, as you might expect, defines how many rows and columns our table is going to have. Both rows and columns are required arguments for this function, so they must be included. I'm going to start out by adding 1 row and have my columns be 2, which I'm able to obtain from collecting the length of the columns attribute of my data frame. I'm only starting out with 1 row because I find it to be fairly easy to just add rows to the Word document while you are looping through the content of the data frame. Now let's define the column headers. My table variable, which contains the table defined in the cell above, has an attribute called rows. It contains a list of all the rows in the table on our Word document. Since we only have 1 row so far, I can access it by using the 0 index. The row has a cells attribute, which contains the information for each cell of that row. Executing this code block, we can see our headers variable is a tuple of cell objects. These cell objects are the first 2 cells of our table. Adding our headers text to the 2 cells is as simple as enumerating through the list of column items on the columns attribute of our data frame. So in this for loop enumeration, I select the given loop's headers object by using the E from the enumeration and choosing the text attribute. This text attribute I assign the given loop's column. I then print out the column to see what has been assigned to our first row. I convert the column to a string because the text attribute can have trouble sometimes with an integer. We are okay in our case because the column headers are just text, but it's good practice to include this anyway. Executed, we can see food and amount printed below. Now let's add the content of the data frame. I start this for loop by using the iterRows function on my data frame. With each looping row of my data frame, I create a new row of cells by accessing the add row function of the table and selecting that new row's cells attribute. These new cells are stored in the row cells variable. Next, I enumerate through each item in my data frame's row and assign each row cell's text attribute the value of whatever is in my data frame's row. I again add this string function here because I know some of my data is in an integer form. To be assigned to the text attribute, it must be a string value. All that is left is to now save my document to my directory. Keep an eye on the directory on the left to see the Word document appear. I'll use the save function on my doc object and save it as DataFrame example. Executed, we can see the document has appeared. Let's open up Microsoft Word and see what we have. We have ourselves a Microsoft Word document that contains the data frame I just created in Jupyter Labs. If you'd like to add some borders around the cells, that's as easy as selecting the whole table and adding borders from the ribbon pop-up. I was unable to find a way to easily do this with the docx library, but adding borders manually does the trick for our case. So it's pretty simple. Import the specific libraries you need to accomplish the task, start a document object in memory, add the table specifying the rows and columns as required arguments, then finally add the headers and table data with a few for loops. Once done, save the document with the document object's save function. As always, thank you for watching. Please let me know in the comments down below if this was a useful and informative video. If you did like it, please give it a thumbs up, as that really does help others find this content. And don't forget to hit subscribe so that you know when the next video drops.